Hello there. So, did you try to make a set of curtains and have a fail? This actually is pretty interesting because it's such a simple project that you think this should be no problem. I mean, it's one piece of fabric and they are straight lines. You go look on YouTube, you see other people doing it and they're like, oh, this is easy peasy, one of those things. You say, no problem. You get your fabric, take it home, and you wind up with a big twisted mess. You say, what's going on? And maybe you redo it, you pin it, and again, and you wind up with a twisted mess. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why this is happening, how it's not your fault, and how maybe you can get, how you can work around it. So first of all, the big reason about why it happens is because you have your feed dogs on the bottom and your regular presser foot on top, and as it goes through, you will have, it gets ever so slightly fed at a different rate. And when you fold over the edges so that you can make your hems and your sides nice and finished instead of leaving them raw, when you fold it over to do it, since it's just a fold, as the layers go through, the bottom gets fed through and the top layer isn't quite catching up, and so then it starts to kind of get this roll in it and this sort of warp thing. This can also happen pretty common on slippery fabrics, but also if you are sewing very thick layers. And this happened to me years ago when I was doing this bit of a costume thing, and you could just see right here how it's a little bit of a roll and a turn at everything, and it makes it pretty difficult. Apparently also quilters have this issue also because they're sewing a lot of layers of stuff together. So one way to combat this problem is to get a special foot. And this right here should tell you that sewing curtains is not necessarily a beginner project, even though it seems so simple, if you have to buy a separate foot. Because not only do you have to buy an additional piece of equipment, but learning how to use, working with new feet takes a little bit of practice anytime you want to do it. So this is called a walking foot, and what it has here is it has a top set of feed dogs, so that the bottom ones do their job and this rides along with it, and it helps to push it, the top fabric a little bit more so that it can stay in line with the bottom. You might think that doing that will solve all your problems. I did, and it did not. I bought it and I still had problems. I was working with a very slippery fabric for a friend of mine. It also might depend on your level of OCD too, because I will tell you that this is what the outside of the fabric looks like, but this is what the inside looks like, and you can see right here and right here these little puckers where it would start to get away from me, and then I'd have to like almost make like a pleat for it to catch up. And my level of OCD, I was not happy with this. And this is with the special foot. Without it, I could not go 5 stitches without it. Really, it was so slippery. It would really roll pretty bad and it was unworkable. Luckily, the solution turns out to be pretty simple and pretty cheap too. What you're going to want is plain old tissue paper, which I usually have on hand when I'm sewing anyway, because if you do a lot of sewing, I like to retrace my patterns if you need to make a custom pattern or things like that. I'm not working with the original and chopping it up and pinning it multiple times. So a lot of times I will have tissue paper on hand, especially for making my own custom things. So, and you know, you just get it at the dollar store, so you get a bunch of it. And I made some strips. I wanted a little bit of a thickness because it works better, so I went ahead and folded each strip in half. You're going to have this layer on the bottom so that it makes your feed dogs not grip, at least in my case, this was a very slippery fabric, so it made it not grip it so well so that it's not pulling it so hard against your other stuff. So that gives it, so it's not quite racing ahead of the top layer, and then you're able to do it. So once it gets stitched down, then you just pull it apart and you have a much better result. If you are, some other things that you can do, some people mention the stitch witchery, which is like a thing for making seams. That's also good. You want to keep in mind how much it can be expensive and how much linear feet of that you need if you want to go around all the 4 corners, and how many curtains that you're making. I was making, it ended up being 10 for a neighbor down the street, so she needed quite a bit. That's not a project you'd want to use stitch witchery for. Another good thing to have in your arsenal that is an easy way to get around this problem too. And just if you're doing a lot of sewing, you really want, it took me a while to get this. I was always afraid of buying new feet. But this is like a little rolled hem foot, and it puts a really nice, I think, 1/4 inch, it will like turn it twice. And it comes out, it just is a really nice way to finish off a raw edge. You won't in the case of curtains. I usually do a 1 inch folded over 1 inch for the side, which would probably be something like that width, and have it stitched. It won't have that nice wide border, but if you're looking to just get something, you know, get something finished so that it won't fray, and you didn't necessarily want to pick up this, you could have this foot, which is then very useful also for a lot of, if you're doing garment construction. I would really recommend having one of these. And again, anytime you have a new foot, it does take some practice getting it, because this one, if you don't get the right curl in it, it will just kind of fold it once and stitch it. If it gets going and curls it too much, then it's like layers on layers, and it starts getting scary, like you're going to break a needle, because you hear your machine going ka-ching, 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 you know, trying to punch through all those layers of fabric out of a very, very small thing. So anytime you get, whether it's this or this, a new foot, they do take a little bit of practice. But for your curtains, whether it's a slippery fabric or a lot of layer fabric, I would recommend an easy, cheap solution is to just get yourself some tissue paper. Then you're going to have that on underneath, on the very bottommost layer, and then you have your fabric layer on top. So good luck, happy sewing.